Views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests and contributors, and not necessarily those of WFSU Public Media.
What's the 411? 411 Teen is a weekly program for teens, families, educators, and other interested folks. 411 Teen provides a forum to examine and discuss various issues and events that confront, intersect, and sometimes interrupt our daily lives. The number of teens and young adults struggling with anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues has spiked in recent years. Today's young adults are characterized as disconnected from the real life and living in an age of screens with significant communication issues. Ken Rabbo, author, creator, and CEO of Mentoring Young Adults, shares his expertise and insights in helping frustrated parents develop effective strategies with Gen Zers. An epidemic of teen and college-age students find themselves lost in the world of the 21st century. They can end up with addictions, self-sabotage, eating disorders, anxiety, just to name a few. Ken Rabbo, the author of The Slacker's Guide to Success, has created a simple and powerful 13-step program to empower young people to find their personal successes in a challenging world. I'm Dr. Liz Hollyfield. Ken Rabbo, welcome to 411 Teen. I am so glad that we are able to connect.
Thank you, Liz. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I am glad to have you. There's 1,000 questions, of course, that I have and the listeners want to know. First, let's start out with, would you share some of the common challenges parents face with their young adult children today?
It's very, very interesting. I've been doing this for 22 years. Originally, I was working with millennials, and they had more problems with ADHD and depression. And now with Gen Z, it's morphed to the 75-80% of the people I see have major anxiety and what they call failure to launch, which means they can't pick a thing to start or try. They have what's called FOMO, fear of missing out, and FOMO, fear of messing up. And truthfully, they'd rather eat ground glass than make an email or a phone call or, God forbid, talk to someone. Pardon?
Go right ahead.
So getting these young people to do things in the real world is really challenging. The parents are coming from, as we all do, taking what their parents did for them that worked and using that on these young adults. And for a good portion of them, it works. But for a larger and larger portion of Gen Z versus millennials, it doesn't work. And what we have to do is understand how these young adults, these Gen Zs, are learning and growing and playing and communicating. Go into their world and then help them come into our world. Their world is online. They live in what I call cyberspace. I call them Cyberdonians.
Okay.
Because, right?
I like it.
Thank you very much. And you'll like this, hopefully, equally, because we grew up on the streets playing kick the can, tag, all these things. I call us Pterodonians.
Okay. We were, on the ground.
Yeah.
I got you.
So you've got the Cyberdonians having one world and the Pterodonians having another. And what does this mean? When Timmy or Tammy are on the computer playing a game, they might as well be down the street at the park playing ball. They're there with people from all over the world. And some of these relationships, if you look at some millennials who play games and Gen Zs who've been playing for games, they have friends for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years that they're never going to see. And they care about these people, and they're important to them. But to Mrs. and Mr. Smith, They're just playing their video games all day long and they're not doing anything.
Right, right.
And of course that causes frustrations to the parents. What I do when I see someone and they tell me they have anxiety, they have depression, they have failure to launch, these are things we'll talk about. They're self-sabotaging, they have anger issues, they have communication issues, they have addiction issues. When I meet a young adult as a mentor, and this is what I teach my parents and people I train, my first question is not, let's work on your anxiety. Let's find out what's with your anxiety. How do we fix anxiety? Because you just make more anxiety.
Right.
I always
agree.
say to my mentors and my mentees, we amplify the things we focus on. My first question to my mentees are, what are 3 things you'd like to work on? What are the challenges to those things? And what are the first signposts of success? This changes their mindset. And what the parents are dealing with is they're looking at the old methods, which really worked for boomers and Gen Xers, a little bit for millennials, right?
Right.
Not so much for them. And so you have the Chinese finger puzzle. You have 2 people pulling and they're stuck and they don't know how to let go.
Okay.
How do the parents see this? They see them as, failing school, not telling the truth, self-sabotaging, bursts of anger. And part of that is we're not communicating together. Mentoring in the 21st century has to be about believing, and I believe this with my whole heart, every young adult has the genius for whatever their greatness is. Our job as mentors is to help them walk their own path and guide them and turn them around from the dead ends. And that's something that is sorely lacking these days.
Well, that kind of leads me to asking, this pandemic brought a lot of economic hardships. I mean,
Yes.
disrupted the learning and
Oh, boy.
and less in-person time. And we had less
Yes.
in-person time with teachers, with families,
Yes.
with friends, with everybody.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the young folks are still dealing with the fallout
boy.
of these challenges?
Hugely. I want to
Okay.
say to the parents, if you have what I'm calling COVID kids, you're not alone. Every other parent coming to me has someone who was doing great at school, doing great at sports, doing great in social life. Everything was put on hold for 2 years, 3 years, and they failed miserably doing it online, didn't communicate. Not everyone, but the ones I see, right? And first of all, to the parents, let me tell you, you're not alone. It's a problem. What's the problem with that particular group? They had a track that worked. Someone laid that track and they went, I can do this. I can study and go to class and get my grades. I can follow the teacher. I can follow my friends. I can follow the coaches, and I can do this, what I call extrinsic motivation. All of a sudden, in the entire world, it's erased. Those tracks are gone. They look for tracks. There's no tracks. It's like, think Peter O'Toole, right? It's just a desert. And they don't know how to dig their own tracks. They never learned how to dig their own tracks. And so what happens is they look and they go, gee, I was magic. Everything worked. Now I'm not magic.
Right.
If they say, I need to talk to parents, I need to talk to teachers, I need to talk to a whole bunch of people and learn how to do this, I never see them. By the way, remember, most Gen Zs would rather eat ground glass than make a phone call or an email or, God forbid, talk to someone. If they say, I'm no longer magic, I think I'll self-sabotage, then it won't be my fault.
Yeah.
If I choose to fail and I do, then I've won. So that's what my Gen Z, my regular Gen Z, who always had trouble, and these COVID kids have in common. Even though they come from a different way, they're now at the same place.
What role, let me see, what role our impact has social media have had on the social and emotional development of young folks today? I mean, do we feel like technology has exacerbated these problems, has exacerbated the challenges? The screens, are they the problem? I don't know that I say they're the problem, but I know that parents feel like they are the problem.
Parents often come to me and point to social media and to screens. And looking observationally, it would make sense to do that because you look, you see the effect, you see where they are, and you go, it must be that. We are moving into a world that's going to be virtual and augmented, and it's coming. And Gen Z, if they can learn how to live in the virtual world and live in the physical world, that's our job, is how to get them to go back and forth. We will have generations that will be well-rooted and be able to do extraordinary things. The rate of technology change, you see it, Liz, it's mind-boggling.
Yes, it is. It's hard to keep up with.
It really is. It's exciting. I love ChatGPT. She's my pal.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, pick anything. Remember in the 50s, it was pinball. And they would say, oh, pinball's the root of all juvenile delinquency. If we got rid of pinball, everything would be fine.
Right.
And it was, whatever you think.
Just like rock and roll.
Exactly, right? It's the devil's music. It's the reason why everything's wrong. No, the reason it's wrong is because they're teenagers and they're going to revolt. Things are a little different now. So the first part is, in what I see, I see a lot of people, like I said, 1,000 hours face-to-face on Zoom all over the States every year since 2016. I see a lot of different people, and 3 to 5% of the people I see are addictive nature. And so it could be Beanie Babies instead of social media.
Right.
They would still, They would still mess up.
Right.
And so we have to sort of first separate, okay, is this young person someone who would have had these issues, and do we have to deal with addiction? Which I say addiction is kind of passion gone the wrong way.
Hold your thoughts. Ken, I told you about that time where I was going to have to interrupt you mid-sentence.
Absolutely.
Well, this is one of those times.
Okay.
So I'm asking you to hold your thoughts for a second. You're tuned in to 411 Teen. We are going to take a brief break, but we will get right back at you. If you're just tuning in, the program is 411 Teen, and I am very honored to have Ken Rabbo share his insights and his expertise with us for parents who I know are often so frustrated. So, Ken, I had to interrupt you mid-sentence. Would you continue your thoughts?
I just gave you the meaning of life. It's over. I can't do it again. Stay tuned, Candace. And so I was talking about social media and how we perceive it, and how there's that 3 to 5% who have addictive natures. And let's separate them. There's a different thing that we should talk about another time. Most young people...
That means you have to come back now,
There you go.
Okay.
I'll come back if you invite me.
I will invite you, that's sure.
That's great. Was that a hint on my part? I'm having fun. And so what happens is, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's just surfing things, whether it's any of these things, most of the mentees that I work with use these things in 2 ways. One is brilliantly. They use it to glean information. They use it to connect with people who have similar instances of interest. I have a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum. And so they're finding tons of other young people who are autistic, maybe a woman who's autistic, they're not as well represented out there in the media. So it's wonderful for them to find other people. Maybe they're also ADHD. I'm thinking of one of my amazing mentees. Maeve is someone who's brilliant, she's talented, I'll use her as an example, is completely on social media, now on TikTok, before it used to be Facebook, a long, long time ago, Instagram, was failing at school, had constant fights with her mom. Not the dad stayed out of the way. It was mainly mom and Maeve fighting back and forth, and Maeve would just blow up. And as soon as we started working together, it came very clear. One of the questions I'll ask if I have this feeling that I have someone who's what I call neurodiverse on the spectrum, is I'll say, I said to her, Maeve, did you ever have, or do you still have issues with like textures or smells? I was, oh my God, yeah, like there's these three ones, potatoes drive me insane. That texture, just like if there's even a hint of potato, I'll send the whole thing back. And I said, I think we need a neuropsych exam. And we did a neuropsych exam, and she came back with major ADHD, which we knew, and on the spectrum, on high functioning autism. And it helped us immensely. We got some fantastic therapists that she's working with. She did, oh my goodness, dialectical behavior therapy. I hope I'm saying it right, DBT. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Good. And she would come to me, because what my job is, mentor with Maeve, is action-based. We're about getting stuff down. We're not talk therapy. Everything I do is action-based. So Maeve picked the goals that she wanted to work on, which was doing better at school, not breaking or crying, and not getting into fights, and having, building a new friend group. One of the things that happens to, especially young women on the spectrum, and to happen to Maeve in particular, was all these things she did, her quote unquote friends hated. And they were just her dealing with things and coping with things. And they were brilliant coping strategies for someone who didn't know they were on the spectrum. So she would talk about something she's on social media over and over and over again. And at one time, all the friends just dumped her. And so it was heartbreaking. And so this is before us. We started working together. I'm her practice partner, and then we're going to bring in the parent partner, her mom, eventually, to practice the things that I'm going to teach Maeve. And for social media, she wasn't going to bed till 5 in the morning, so she didn't do very well in her morning classes. I asked Maeve, what's your sleep routine? I don't have a sleep routine. Maeve, everyone has a sleep routine, they just don't know it. Well, you know, I zoom through, I guess at the beginning it was Instagram. She goes through Instagram for anything interesting about ADHD or just psychology. She's fascinated by this stuff. And Latin. She was a Latin whiz in high school. And then I look, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, what would you do, Maeve? Can you show me your room? Shows me her room. I said, I see on the other side there's a wall plug. Yeah. What if we put the charger there and had you charge your phone on the other side of the room? She looks at me, because it's Zoom. You're not serious. And I said, well, why don't we try it once and see what it's like? So I see her twice a week. I think it was Mondays and Thursdays at the time. That was Monday. On Thursday, I come back. And I said, how'd it go? Well, I plugged it in, went to bed, got up, and then brought it back, and that was it. I hate you, Ken. I said, what would it take to try it for an hour? Because you don't go to bed right away. He says, that's true. I said, try it for an hour, put an alarm on, and see what that's like. And over the next 3 weeks, Maeve started to put it away. And what happened was we were able to get from 5 in the morning till 2 in the morning, and then to 1 in the morning. Now, to her mom, she's still getting up late. She still sees that the same thing's happening because mom's asleep by 11:30. Right. And so they have a big fight about it. You're still getting up. You're getting up late and you're sleeping till, and Maeve says, I'm doing better. And there was a whole fight. My job was then to help her mom, Lucy, ask Maeve, what exactly are you working on? How do you think it's going? And that simple question stopped the accusations. And so it wasn't the social media, it was the habits. It was, the other thing that Maeve would do is when she would get anxious, she would run to her phone and social media. It soothed her. It turned out classical music also does that. So I said, how would you feel about when you're feeling overwhelmed, that you just put something in, because she's actually cool with like earbuds, put something in your ears and listen to, I forget what, I can't remember what she likes. It's like one of the cool classics. I can't remember, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And it really soothed her. And then we taught her in social situations, instead of running to social media, after half an hour, if you're overwhelmed, check in and say to Mom, I need to have about 15, 20 minutes away from the party and relax, and then I'll come back. And so what the mom saw as social media, I'm not saying this is all cases, I'm just giving you one example, is changed everything, because social media was her sus at night.
Yes.
Social media was her blue blanket during the day. Social media was her connection. And as we changed it through each of these things, the real issues underneath were addressed.
And one of the things that was addressed was communication. Because
Yes.
that is really a key, I think.
It is.
Communication
It's
is
so-
a key. You know,
it really-
Mom approached her and asked her. And Mom hadn't been doing that. She had just
No.
been assuming. Okay?
Exactly.
So that makes a big difference, okay?
Huge.
Yes.
Very soon.
You talked about, or referred to failure to launch. And I wanted to ask you, we hear so much about failure to launch.
Yes.
That if you would elaborate on that, just what is failure to launch and how is it, impacting, I guess, Gen Z from
Yes.
seems-
Hugely.
Yes.
Much, much more than millennials. We have like a little thing that people tick off when they put a consult in to talk to me about their child, about us mentoring their child. Failure to launch, we just looked at some statistics with my IT guy. 45% of the people click failure to launch. Whereas 10 years ago, it was a new word almost, and it was maybe 5% of the time. So with millennials, not so much. Gen Z, massive. Why failure to launch? These young adults, through living in cyberspace, these cyberdonians, have a very, very wide net of knowledge, but not depth. And what happens from that is they've seen people who try to do things and be humiliated in cyberspace. And they also know that there's 5,000 other choices. And so failure to launch, in what I see with my mentees, is the inability to pick, to start, and when you fall on your butt, to be able to get back on and start again. As Wayne Dyer said, and I love this quote, either I'm getting it right or I'm learning. And so I say to my mentees over and over again, we're going to do a daily routine. You can only do in your life what you can do in a day. And if it doesn't work, when you come back, no harm, no foul. I'll say, cool, let's start again. What did you do last night? Can you write that in? Let's start putting what today is. And they learn that it's okay to mess up and start again, start again, start again. That is the kryptonite to failure to launch. And there's one more, piercing the target. I just need one toe in the water. I don't need you to jump off the deep end. I'll take a baby toe. If you just try, I don't know what to do with this paper. Okay. What we actually do, because we're on Zoom and we have like a Google Drive where we share docs, we have a homework doc. I'll say, throw in the teacher's instruction. If you are not good at teacher instruction, if you're a just-in-timer, you've pulled classes, tests and exams out of your butt at the last minute most of your life, you never learned how to do it well. You don't know how to understand teacher speak, also known as instruction. And teachers are vastly underpaid and vastly underappreciated.
Yes.
But a great deal of them are not great at giving instruction. And so what I have to do with, Maeve was a perfect example when she came to me. We look at something, she says, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. I can't handle this. That's kind of how she feels. She's overwhelmed. I said, Maeve, take the actual instruction, put it up so we can see it. We take it up and we break it down line by line. Okay, what does she want here? What does she want there? And she follows it and it makes sense. And when it doesn't, she does the dreaded email. We can talk about with communication afterwards. She does the email. She understands. The teacher's so happy, she asked, and she now understands the instruction. The next part to break failure to launch, piercing the target, is, okay, what's the first paragraph you would write for this? Or write the outline. So she writes the first paragraph. And here's the secret. Because if you just write the first paragraph, that's great, Maeve. I'll see you Thursday, this is Monday, and she'll have done nothing. Why? Failure to launch.
Yeah.
She didn't have the next piece. What all does it take? Okay, Maeve, you just finished that paragraph. Do me a favor, write the first sentence to the next paragraph. That simple thing has pierced the target for the next time she comes. She won't have panic. She won't have a million choices. She'll see it, she'll understand, and Maeve was failing, right? Not handing stuff in. She is a solid A student right now. Yeah, go Maeve.
What role, if any, does parenting style play in affecting the Gen Z generation?
That's a great question. When I talk about this, I write about this, there are 5 parenting styles. I cheat because I only say there's 4 parenting styles. There are 4 regular parenting styles that people default to. Helicopter parenting, free-range parenting, pussycat parenting. Oh, it's wonderful. You don't have to do anything. It's okay, darling. And tiger parenting. You will do it all, and you will do it now, or I'm breaking all of your screens.
Okay.
Some of those may work for a bit of time, but they could do a lot of things that aren't what you intended in how they affect your child. Helicopter parenting can often lead to dependency. It inhibits your child's ability to tackle challenges on their own and foster an expectation that the parents are going to come and save them. So why should I strain myself? Why should I push that extra little bit? Free-range parenting leaves a child ill-prepared to recognize and adhere to boundaries, online world and in the real world. And that often affects their understanding of what's safe and where responsibility lies, because they have no guardrails. What I call pussycat parenting creates an environment where the children lacks discipline and lacks a respect for authority, and it makes it hard for them to commit to tasks without them getting something. What's in it for me? And a lot of companies are finding that outcome from pussycat parenting in jobs. And then the tiger parenting. And while a discipline-oriented system can help for the moment and pressure children to perform to high standards, it can stifle creativity, and its lack of intrinsic motivation. Those are the guys I get that, who was it recently? It was Evan. Evan's mom writes me. Evan was doing great in high school. He was in football. He was a solid B+, A- student. We sent him off to school on a scholarship. Every week we'd call him 3 times, say, how's it going? And Evan would say, it's great, Mom. It's great, Dad. And then in April, I think it was April, because I saw him, this is last year, in May. They got a note from the school that he hadn't shown up for 3 months, and he had failed everything, and they were withdrawing the scholarship. On Evan's side, what happened was he went in and started to have major anxiety because he had tiger parents. And for the first time, he had to have intrinsic motivation. He had none.
Right.
And so he thought, I'm just going to hang out with my friends. There's a lot of booze, there's a lot of weed, there's a lot of video games. It'll distract me from my anxiety about the course and about what I have to hand in. I'll get it in eventually.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I have way too much anxiety. If I just avoid it, and he told me this is what he was thinking. then it'll work out. It's always worked out at high school. And then we're back into April, and he gets a call. There's a huge fight between them. He's upset that they looked at his grades online. They're upset that he lied. He feels he didn't lie. He didn't actually say he was failing. He thought it was going well. It was. He was getting high. He was drinking. He was partying. It was going great.
It was going well. You're right.
They asked the wrong question.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
So now he's gun shy from a tiger parent. And what we're doing is we are building up intrinsic motivation. Right now he's doing his daily routine. We're starting to look at homework exercises, doing some simple stuff, he and I, before I even get him to a summer course. We'll do one summer course if it works well. We'll do 3 in the winter. So who is the final parent? It is the empowerment parent who empowers their child. That means understanding and empathy, recognizing the unique pressures faced by this generation. Let them show you what they're doing online. Don't judge it. Learn. Be a curious traveler in their world. Empowerment through choice. Encourage their children. And I've seen parents do this, and I love when I see this. You see it on the street. Timmy, did you want the chocolate or did you want the vanilla? Right?
Yes.
Instead of saying, you like the vanilla, or this is, it's that simple little thing at those young ages is also fantastic as they get older. Encourage those decisions. Let them learn from their consequences, free of judgment.
Well, hold your thoughts. Hold your thoughts. You tuned in to 411 Teen, and we are going to take a brief break, but we will get right back at you.
Views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests and contributors, and not necessarily those of WFSU Public Media.
What's the 411? You're tuned in to 411 Teen, a weekly program for teens and families, educators, and other interested folks. I have a dynamic guest today, Ken Rabbo, and he is full of suggestions and insights and sharing his expertise. So Ken, again, I just want to say thank you. I mean, I think it's just very enlightening. In looking at all of this, we're talking about these parents and parenting styles. What role does culture or milieu play in the whole impact of all that's going on, these challenges, this communication? Does culture influence?
Could you give me a little bit more
Well,
understanding what you're thinking?
and when I'm saying culture, I'm looking at just spreading it all across the board, because culture impacts how we communicate. Okay. It impacts how we communicate with our parents, how we communicate with our peers. So it impacts how we look at self. It impacts the variables that we consider important in self-development. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing any patterns as far as culture is concerned.
So when you say culture, do you mean the online culture, or you mean the culture of the families and where they come from culturally?
I mean the culture of the families and where they're coming from culturally.
It's a great question. I just wanted to clarify where you're coming from, because I'm talking about the internet culture all the time. With millennials and with the early Gen Zs, I only saw American kids. And my mentees are 13 to 28, so they're not kids, but young adults.
Yeah.
And we never saw, for example, people from the islands. We never saw people, we do now, all of these ones. We never saw people from India. We never saw people from China, from Pakistan. And okay, these are people living mainly in the States that I work with. I do work in other countries, but mainly in the States. And now we have these kids where the parents are, have have moved here 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years
Exactly.
ago.
That's what I'm talking about. Yep.
They're from those cultures, and their kids, have a foot in both worlds. They have a foot in the US, America world, and they have a foot in whatever culture they come from, islands, India, China. And it was a parent I was just talking to yesterday, and she was saying, if I did what Jake, that's not his real name, I'm not going to call him Jake, what Jake did, my parents would have boxed my ears for a week. And if I say I'm thinking of taking away your iPhone, he throws a tantrum and I have to give it back to him. And I have to explain to the mom that he does live in two cultures. He actually lives in three cultures. Whether they come from any place in the world, and I've had people from the Mideast, I've had people from Switzerland, I have people in England, I have people in France. They're the same. They're all in this internet monoculture, learning pretty much the same stuff. There is a 10, 20, 30% layer where I will see, none of my Jamaican clients would ever say diss their moms, would never say the stuff that my American kids would say to their moms, because they know they'd be dead.
That's exactly what I meant. Yep.
But with that 20 or 30% adjustment for different cultures, 70-odd% is really a monoculture of online knowledge. What you're learning wherever you are is pretty much the same. Their phenomenon of TikTok, where first it was silly dances, and now it's a repository for information, for news, for research, all sorts of things. All of these kids are doing that. To young people now, Facebook is old. To millennials, okay, we're talking 20 years millennials.
Yeah.
Facebook was what TikTok is now. And so culture is sort of that added layer, and it causes more challenges for these young people. And sometimes it's something as they get better that lets them leap higher, because these cultures are rich. All of these cultures are rich. And so we love it when we get to John Smith 2.0, Jane Smith 2.0. We want to bring those things back in. We have our parent partner. I train my parents as much as I train my mentees. They need as much help as my mentees do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so we train them at 2.0 to have new levels of communication and to bring in that culture, bring in the things that these kids love but have been fighting just to mess with their parents because they're pooping on that cyberspace world. So that's how I see it playing out.
Okay. How can, and I know that you focus
That's a great
on
question, by the way. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, okay. How can parents help their young adult children develop meaningful connections in real life? Do you have any suggestions?
Great question. This is it takes about 5 different steps. Sorry, it's not an easy answer. But parents listening, you will have the answer when I finish all this. You have to put it all together. Understand, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of your kids have meaningful relationships online. And I know you think they're not real. They are as real to them as their friend down the block. Second, understand this generation, at least what I see, 75% of them are riddled with anxiety. And we have in the daily routine, sometimes I'll add, what was your anxiety floor today? And they said, nothing. I said, you have no anxiety? Oh no, it's always at 7. I said, why did you say nothing? I said, well, because I'm used to it. It's always at 7.
So it's no big deal.
I don't know
that's
right?
Status quo.
Right. That's my life. I'm used to it. I think we need to bring that down. So we're going to do diaphragmatic breathing. We're going to do all these stuff. But if they have that anxiety, they can't get out of their house, which is what I call distance-based anxiety. They have what, I say to my mentees, if that person in your head was your parent, they would have been arrested years ago for child abuse. And that voice is supposed to be your best friend. So I help them understand that voice and make it their new helper. That's going to help me get Timmy or Tammy or whoever you want out of the house. I got to get them to be able to make an email. I have to get them to consider going out the door to somewhere else. I have to get them to consider going, let's say, to a World of Warcraft in real person, what would you call it? Exposition, I don't know what it's called. I'm so old. And I'll say, just go in there. Don't talk to anyone, but just go in and look around. Again, piercing the target. Well, I stayed there 5 hours. You did? Yeah, I met two really cool people, and they had the same cards I do, and we talked forever. We're friends now. What we have to understand is just do it, which would have worked in the 50s or 60s or 70s, doesn't work now.
No.
You have to deal with the anxiety. You have to deal with all these different pieces. And if you do all these things, and there is a parent mentoring workshop that I give that teaches this online for parents. If you do all this, you will get them to make those real connections in the real world, but understand all the pieces that are involved.
Ken, what role does the education system or school play?
That's a wonderful question. I'm thinking about it. One of the things that is nuts, I'm just trying to think of the number. It's something, again, about 3/4 of my guys have accommodations. And for those who don't know accommodations or IEPs, it's my magic power to make sure my guys get what they need in school, is the ability of young people in high school or university who have anxiety, who have ADHD, who have depression, PTSD, to get certain things, such as 50% more time to take tests, to have a quiet room to take tests if they need it. What are some of the other things? Sometimes we'll get a note taker, although these days they have this really cool pen that'll record them. So a lot of the
Yes, they do.
live scribe, it's awesome.
Isn't it?
And so, pardon?
I said, it is, isn't it? That pen
Yeah, it
that
really
records
is.
stuff. Yes.
I love it. And so for some of my ADHD guys, we do that. These are all different pieces. Sometimes they can get extended time to hand things in, and there'll be certain rubrics of what they have to do. And so schools have gotten better at giving lip service to helping out my mentees and your kids who have these issues. The secret is that teachers really were never trained on this stuff and don't really know the stuff. My experience is a quarter of the teachers are really good with these things, and the others need a very gentle stick, which is find out who the accommodation officer connected to your child is, and then connect with them. And if something goes awry, I'll have my mentee send an email, but I dictate it. And we will send the email to the teacher. I know you said that I had to give 3 days notice. I did give 3 days notice. I didn't do it in writing. I did speak to you. Do you remember? And carbon copy the accommodations person, because the teacher will see, oh, okay, they're involved. I have to follow the rules. And so schools, high schools, universities, to some extent are talking about these mental health issues. They're trying to do them, but I see a disconnect between the accommodation people, and a bunch of them are outstanding, God bless them. Some are not, like everything else in life. Make sure you have someone that's taking care of your child, and make sure that the accommodations is connected to helping getting those things for the teachers. In school in general, I think that everything is going to change massively within the next 5 years with artificial intelligence, with the ability of not just ChatGPT, but other kinds of bots to help understand the learning challenges and accommodate the lessons. I use ChatGPT, that I pay for the 4.0 version, and I find stuff that the therapists miss because they're not sitting there going through the algebra. And I can have ChatGPT look at, Maeve's algebra, because she sucked at algebra, she had to pass it. And I had her put in a paper, and ChatGPT was able to assess it and say, I don't know this stuff, 3 blah blah, I didn't understand any of it, but Maeve got it, and then ChatGPT made exercises for her, and she passed. She got actually a 70, which was the first time. She's failed it 2 times before. And so that's just now. School is going to go through a massive change. But with what we have now, if you have, I'm talking to the parents, if you have someone who has these issues, make sure you have accommodations. And if your child says, oh, well, I don't need them, say, it's better to have them and not use them than realize you need them and now you can't.
Right. I knew that's what you were going to say. Oh, but at what point, and I'm looking at it, we're almost out of time. I got 3 questions I want to ask. At what point should parents pursue professional intervention?
What type of intervention are you thinking of?
Whatever. Testing, evaluation, counseling. I mean, when do they get to a point where they realize, I'm not making a difference, okay? I need to have somebody from the outside come in and help me address these concerns with my young adult.
Absolutely. I would suggest the first level of intervention would be some form of mentor. And, my rule of life is 80-10-10. 80% of everything is, what's a nice way to say poop? 10% is good and 10% is great. That's the same for life coaches. That's the same for everything else. Find a mentor who's actually good, who only does work with young adults, not 20 different things as well as young adults.
Thank you.
And have them be on your team. And then once you've done that, together as a team, try to figure out what is truly needed. Do they need therapy? Do they need counseling? Remember the ground glass. Gen Zs don't tend to do well at counseling until they've gone through all the other things with a mentor to be okay with talking to outside people. Then counseling can be fantastic. But until you've got the basics going, find a partner who does this as they're living. And with that, figure out what you need. At some point, if your child is missing something, whether it's, in the NLP world, whether it's they're having trouble because if you're not a visual learner, most teaching is based on that 70% of visual learners, not the auditory, not the kinesthetic. So if you know your child is different in that, or if you know that your child in the early years would get in trouble because they get up and run around, but that was really the only way they could learn. They had to move or do something. If you see these issues are continuing, if you see they're zoning out, if you see that they're trying or they can't even begin, that's when I call in professionals.
Okay. Are there any particular, in this last 2 minutes, are there any particular resources or programs that you would recommend for parents seeking additional support or guidance?
I say, look, it's a good question. First of all, find a mentor. Look in your area. We're online, we're everywhere. May I mention the name of our company?
Oh, sure. Yes.
So, mentoringyoungadults.com is the place where we help people, and you can do a free consultation, and if I don't feel that we're right for you, I'll suggest other things. If you want to do it yourself, there's parentmentoringworkshop.com, which is where you can actually learn to do this on your own and get all these skills and learn how to find people. I would say go in your area, go online. Google is a good resource, and look for ADHD specialists near me.
Okay.
Look at the reviews. If they don't have at least 10 reviews, if they have 5 reviews, it's their brothers and cousins, people that work for them.
Yes.
It's very often the case. Look for good reviews, do the research, and find people, whatever you're searching for, there are people who do it but there are too many people. Remember 80-10-10. You want that top 10.
Okay.
Find a mentor, become a partner with someone who helps your child, and know that there are resources, and just determine that you're going to help your child help themselves.
Well, thank you, because it's time out for this edition of 411 Teen. Special thanks to Ken Rabbo. I really appreciate you. To my listening audience, much appreciation for your time and your ear. I'm Dr. Liz Hollyfield, inviting you to tune in next week, same time, same place, to get the 411 on 411 Teen. 411 Teen was produced by Dr. Liz Hollyfield. Technical assistance was provided by Evan Rossi. If you would like to participate in the 411 Teen or have suggestions for discussion topics, call 850-645-7200. You can listen to previous episodes of 411 Teen at WFSU.org.